And here we go. We're recording now. Perfect. So actually, before we even get started, maybe everyone should have received an email yesterday with the exercises, credentials. If any one of you has had a chance to log into the system, any issues in terms of logging into the system, maybe following up with the exercise. I know on Friday or Thursday, actually, Thursday and maybe Friday, we'll see, we'll discuss if we'll have some time and we'll actually create a WebEx session just to go over the exercises themselves. But just to know, nobody has an issue logging into the system. I hope some of you have tested it. If you do, let me know. Just write it in the chat and maybe we can address that later in an email. Okay, so let's get started now with the COE Transportation Management end-to-end process. So basically, this is the first screen we were looking at yesterday, the end-to-end process that Leandro was showing you guys. So basically, as I was saying at the beginning, the first part is what changes. So now this is contingency-owned equipment, and what we're basically going to do is work with an Excel sheet, a load list, it's called. And to be honest with you, I should get started by saying that this is not yet the final product. It's been changing. The Excel sheet has not yet been confirmed to be the final product itself. We had one Excel sheet when we went to New York and did this training first. The Excel sheet has actually changed already. We'll take a look at and how it works now. It's a lot simpler than the first one we were working with. But so you know, it's not final yet. So if we do see or have some questions in terms of discrepancies or things that don't seem too clear for you guys when we're looking at it, it's still not yet a final product, but it's almost there. So again, we're looking at the load list and the stages that we're going to be reviewing. So the first part, as we can see, and let me get my highlighter here, or yes, let me get my highlighter so we can all follow. So we see now this is basically the load list here at the top is what's different from yesterday, but the planning that we go into TM to plan will be exactly the same. So we're looking at here the TCC stage, and now these concepts of LOA and non-LOA. So basically, these concepts refer to also, we could be understood as the Incoterms. So when we're talking about LOA, we could think of DAP, as we were seeing yesterday, and non-LOA would be equivalent to the Incoterm XWorks. So when we see here LOA, it's DAP, and non-LOA, it's XWorks, and we'll see how that works. And we see here the freight forwarder stage and the TCC stage. Yesterday, this was the vendor stage. So that's basically some of the changes in terms of who is doing what, but the steps are very similar. Okay, we see that we have the procure freight, the execute and monitor. So if you do have your presentation from yesterday, you'll see that basically it looks very, very similar, except for, of course, here you had your Incoterms, and now we have the non-LOA and LOA concepts that are new from what we saw yesterday. So the equivalent is LOA DAP and non-LOA is XWorks. So let's see what the first stage looks like. It's the load list, all right, what we call the update the Excel load list, and this occurs offline. So basically in the training in New York, what we learned from those who are using this daily is that they basically receive the information from the troops contributing country in a cargo list. So all this information is pretty much given to them, and all they have to do is copy and paste this data into this new Excel. And this Excel works very similar to if you guys have worked with Excels that work with macro, where you simply have to just edit one field and the rest populate by themselves. That's how this Excel will work. So first thing is our Excel sheet, which is offline. And let's take a look at what that looks like before we even move on to the next step, which would be TM. So let's take a look at this Excel sheet first. And let me drag this over. So this is what the Excel sheet looks like, and I can zoom in a bit so we can all see it clearly. And this is the sheet that we would be working with, right? If you see the tabs at the bottom where it says forwarding order upload, then we have summary, then we have general cargo list, reference location, and reference TCC mission. So we're basically going to be working with the forwarding upload tab and also the summary tab. So let's take a look at first the summary tab, and also maximize that so we can understand what we're doing. Here we go. This is our summary tab, and as I was mentioning before, this really summarizes or comprises all the details that have been given to the users or the TM planners that are going to be working with this information from the general cargo load list. So basically, we're only going to be editing fields that are in red here, like MONUSCO, TCC, cargo collection point, and final destination. All the other data is directly referenced from the general cargo load list, which looks like this. So basically, this information is handed to the user, copied and pasted into this Excel sheet, and that populates the summary list here. By making changes to any of these in red, we will automatically be changing data in the forwarding order upload list here. And now we'll go step by step and we'll look at what these different colors mean and how this Excel works, and we'll be changing some of the data. So basically, we copy and paste this information into the Excel, the general cargo list. This populates the summary tab, and all we have to edit would be the fields here in red. See where it says TCC, cargo collection point, and final destination. The last two tabs here, the reference location, basically work as master data in a way. So we have the information that if we, for example, under city, write here Austin or Zealand or any of the other cities that we have here in this tab, actually in the summary tab, as we see here, Jakarta, if we can look at Jakarta in the reference location, if we scroll to the bottom, we'll see that we also have, I believe Jakarta is somewhere around here. If not, we could always just do a quick search. Any of the locations that we're going to be adding to this summary should be here. If they're not here, of course, we'd have to request them, and they would be added to this reference location section. Now, the only thing that we have been wondering as well ourselves, for example, if we see here Juba, we have 3 different locations for Juba, and the locations change here. So we're still, that's why I said this is not yet the final Excel sheet. For example, if we wanted to select 7 or 6 or 8, and we write Juba in the summary tab here, which one of the 3 are we actually selecting? So these are things that we're still, that's why we know that the Excel is still being worked on, because necessarily if I just write Juba in this field, what does that mean here? Which one am I selecting exactly? So before you guys wonder, I'm already telling you that that's one of the things that still have to be developed, right? So Juba would probably be written Juba 1 for one of these locations, Juba 2 for the other. So basically, we're wondering how you would distinguish one location from the other when you're adding it to the summary tab here. Okay, but these reference locations have to be in this tab so that you can actually add the information here in the summary tab. And you'll see now how that affects the forwarding upload tab here. And the same thing works for the reference TCC mission. Let me also make this a bit bigger. If we write, for example, Albania in the summary tab here, right here, instead of Indonesia, I change it for Albania, that'll automatically change the forwarding upload tab information as well. But the information has to be in this reference tab for the actual TCC, troops contributing country. So these 2 tabs at the end work as master data. See reference location and the TCC mission. So now let's play around a bit with the summary tab and see how every time we make a change here in any of these fields marked in red, we're going to be editing the forwarding upload tab and how these will change as well. But before we do that, let's take a look here at the legend. We see that first in this color, or pink, I would say, it says info retrieved from summary tab. So anything that you see here in pink, all the information that would be in pink is information retrieved from the summary tab. So all the changes we make in the summary tab all these letters that are here in red, these fields, are going to be the ones that are referenced here as the info retrieved from summary tab. The ones in white, info derived from the general cargo list tab. So all the fields that are here in white, for example, the containers and the summary of the containers are derived from the general cargo list tab, which is this one here. So that's something you don't even have to worry about. That would directly be populated in the Excel directly from the cargo list tab, and so on. So the blue field here, it says info retrieved from the location table. So basically, if we're adding Jakarta in the summary tab, remember, we're not adding it directly into the Excel, because if you do into the forwarding upload tab, because if you do add it here, what you're doing is you're just changing one row at a time. And you'll see that if you add it in the summary, it changes all at once. And that's very important, because this Excel sheet is only used for one. For example, remember yesterday Leandro was adding more than one product ID to a shopping cart, also different Incoterms in the shopping cart, and basically generated 3 different DTRs, right, if I'm not mistaken. In this case, we're only going to be doing one at a time, and what that means is that we're only going to be working with one Incoterm at a time, one set of dates at a time, one source location at a time, and one destination location at a time. So you would have to fill in a different Excel sheet with different data for every forwarding order you want to create. Okay, so that's very important. So every time we want to create a forwarding order, we would fill in a different Excel sheet, and we'll see how that works now in a couple of minutes. Let's continue with the legend here, where it says info retrieved from TCC mission tab, and it's kind of grayed out. If we scroll here to our right, we'll see that the member country shipper is gray, and that's what this references to. So the info is retrieved from the tab TCC mission, which is the one we were looking at before. And finally, the one in green here, where it says manual entry mandatory fields. Now, again, as I was saying, this is still not a final product, because instead of it being green, it should be red, because the manual entry mandatory fields are these here: the pickup date from, delivery date to. If we scroll to our right, it'll be the base BTD reference, which is basically the MOU reference. That would have to be added as well, and also the Incoterm here. So basically it's 1, 2, 3, and 4 fields that we're going to be adding manually. Everything else will be retrieved from the summary tab, and that is linked to the cargo list and the reference location and reference TCC mission tabs. So let's see how that works. If, for example, here in Jakarta, let's say I forget and I'm starting to edit one by one some of these fields here. So for example, I'll go to a reference location and say, okay, the car. So forwarding order, and I'm going to change this one to the car. Let's see if I can make the change here. Exactly, but I want to see if I wanted to make the change here. The car, I'm only changing one, you see, and that changed our source location information directly. And same thing here, I could do it one by one, and that would change that one as well. But that's not the way this is supposed to work. What you're supposed to do is add the source location in the summary tab. So we see here the cargo collection point, which would be the source location. If we wanted to change it to the car, we would have to change it here. And once you click on OK and go back to the forwarding upload tab, it changes all your column to the car. That's the way this is supposed to be edited. So not one row at a time, but here in the summary. The same thing would work for all the other fields that are here in pink. So the destination location here says Kalemi. If we wanted to change that, we would go to the summary tab and change it as well. So what it could be our final destination, we would have to look at the reference location tab for master data and say, well, maybe I want to add, let's say, Baidoa, for example, here. And I would go to the summary and change this one to Baidoa. I click on enter, and the destination location changes as well. And you see the reference changes, and that's all linked here in blue, retrieved from the location table. So that's how we would update these fields, okay? Not directly here in this tab, but in the summary tab, and always the fields that are in red. So let's move over and see now the pickup from and delivery to date. So basically, all we would be changing is the first two. If you change these on the bottom, you see, right, just by selecting this field, you see that there's a formula already set up. So any of the changes in the dates would have to be done here in the first row. And the dates before were working sort of reverse, right? So we would have January, we would have to write it at the beginning here, and then the 30th in the middle, 2019. But now the dates have been changed. So in this case, if we wanted to change that to February, we would do it here. And let's say we want to add 20th of February 2019, click on Enter, and that changes all our other dates all the way down. So that's why when I was saying at the beginning that you have to fill in one Excel at a time, that's what this means. So basically you change the first row and all of them follow. The same thing with the delivery to date. If you change this, all of them will follow as well. So let's move over to the right a little more so we understand the rest of the fields. This cargo load list items summarizes what's in the cargo list. So in a sense, we have here the containers, break bulk, trailers, and vehicles. And these, of course, as it says here, are totals. So whatever it is we have here in terms of weight and volume and quantity refer to the totals that are extracted from the cargo load list tab related to containers. So if we go to the cargo load list and we look for containers, we see that all it's been doing here is just adding up the totals we have here. 76 quantity, and in the load list here it's 76. So here all we have is just a summary of all the information that has been added into the cargo load list that we don't even have to worry about, because basically just by copying and pasting the cargo load list that has been sent to us into this Excel, that will automatically feed this sheet here. The first line remains untouched, sort of like a default line that remains blank. It's the load list information. We'll see tomorrow when Leandro presents troops how that looks a bit different. So this row here just stays the same. As we move to the right, and then I'm just going to go through this all the way, and then once I'm done, we can probably go and see if there are any questions. The MOU reference works the same way as the dates that we saw at the beginning. So we would add the reference at the top, and that would automatically populate the rest. The goods value column here populates from the cargo load list tab. And then the Incoterm works the same way. Now, if we wanted to change this to XWorks, we have to change one by one. So again, as I said, this is still not the final product. So you'd have to change them all to XWorks one by one, or simply just copy and paste to the rest of them. So basically, I imagine that there'll be a formula for this one as well. But we would have to indicate the actual Incoterm here. So DAP would stand for LOA, as we saw in the presentation I was showing before, and XWorks would stand for non-LOA. So let me leave it as it was. And now they're all DAP. The troops contributing country, Indonesia, in pink, that means that the information, if I want to change it, would have to be changed in the summary. So I would have to change it here for it to be reflected in my Excel here. The same thing for the member country. We have the reference in the tab called Reference TCC Mission. So we would select the number that refers to the TCC mission itself. So we could always look through here and add it. And basically the mission MONUSCO also in the summary list here at the top. So changing this would change our column here, and then the receiving plant consignee, which is the one we would be using, the one that we're very familiar with in Umoja, which is CD10, that references UNMISS, correct? Okay. So basically, that's how this Excel works. We would have to use one of these Excels every time we're planning on planning transportation for contingency-owned equipment. So basically, we're focusing on the Summary tab, making sure we change the data here in red, and everything else is referenced from the other tabs in the sheet. From the forwarding upload tab, all we have to change manually are the ones in red, which is the pickup from date, delivery to date, as well as the MOU and the Incoterm. Once all our data has been populated and everything is correct, all we have to do is just click on this nice button here where we see the airplane and the boat, train, and so on, and that will generate another Excel and a text file in parallel. It generates both of them. Now, the interesting thing here is that it'll generate it normally wherever you have this Excel saved. Now, this is just for now, so when you do the exercise, you don't go crazy looking for the text file that has been generated. This may change later on, but for now, if you do generate this text file, it'll be saved wherever you have the actual template, this actual Excel template itself. Okay, so if you have it in your desktop, it'll generate it in your desktop, and so on. So you don't go crazy looking for it. So we'll do that in a second. Now, before I continue, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Brian. So I think we have a question regarding the design of the Excel file. And they're asking about why we haven't used the drop-down fields to somehow make it easier to select, for example, the mission, and make the other kind of non-editable fields read-only. It's a matter of design.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we were mentioning at the beginning. It definitely makes a lot more sense to have either the drop-downs, sorry, or some sort of auto-populate. But as I said, it's still work in progress. We still, actually this morning I checked the inbox and we just received the new Excels for troops that we're going to have to be reviewing this afternoon to teach them tomorrow. So basically, yes, it makes a lot of sense, but this is still work in progress, so keep that in mind. Basically, this is for you guys to understand how this is going to work, right? So we created a shopping cart yesterday for goods. Sorry again. And for the contingency of equipment, we're going to be using this Excel. And more or less, even though there will be changes in terms of design and how things reference and the information that is linked from one tab to another may change, this is still the process you're going to have to go through. And what is important is that, at least that has been confirmed already from New York, is that you will have to fill in one of these Excels every time you want to generate a forwarding order. Anything else, Leandro? No? Okay, thank you. So basically, now that we have our information, and now I've really just played around with the details here, and not sure these how these would work when I click on the button itself here. I just also realized that here, for example, this destination location has not changed. All the other ones have, but Kalemi hasn't. Let me go back and see here, right? Okay, let's see. And let me see if it has changed completely here. See, for some reason, Kalemi has changed and the other one hasn't. Let's also change the summary here to, instead of Jakarta, and make sure, see, still, as I said, these Excels are not working 100% yet. And it hasn't changed. So, okay, I can do this then manually here. Just basically, I have, to avoid any issues, I have already uploaded some of these Excels into Umoja. So if by any chance this one doesn't work today in the demo, we can still move on. But basically, once your information has been populated and the dates as well, all you do is just click on the button here, and this will automatically generate this file that I'm going to show you now, which is pretty much another Excel with this information, basically, and a text file that doesn't automatically open up. You would have to look for it as well. So it does open up this Excel file, but when you do upload the file to TM, you're going to have to upload the text file, not the Excel file. So remember, when you click on this button, it generates two things, another Excel and a text file itself. That may also change in the future and just generate your text file. Remember that to find it, you're going to have to go to wherever you have saved this actual Excel sheet. Okay, so we can take a look at what that looks like. I saved this under H, so here, let me open this up here. And basically, it'll generate, you see, there's one, I know this is kind of tiny, but it'll generate the Excel and then in parallel the text file. And that for each one of the ones I tried yesterday, the XWorks text file, the same as the other Excel. So that's where you would find them. The Excel opens up automatically, the text file doesn't, but it does generate them nevertheless. Okay, nonetheless. Perfect. So that, I think that's the end of this Excel. I think it's quite easy to work with. As you see, it's not yet 100%, but we know how, the way this works. At least we can move on and go into TM and start working with how we can plan the freight orders themselves. Okay, so let's go back to our PowerPoint, which we have on screen now, and see what would be the next step. So once we do upload this Excel, and I'm going to show you that in a minute, that will automatically, once the list has been uploaded into TM, will generate the forwarding order. So remember, yesterday you were working with DTRs, the concept of DTR, which was linked to the inbound delivery. Now when you upload the Excel, it's called the forwarding order. And it's also, if I'm not mistaken, it has a, the number is the same. The number it generates in TM is the same, but the nomenclature is different. And the same thing as yesterday, it will generate a forwarding order, and it'll also generate a freight unit. This works the same as yesterday's WebEx with Leandro. If you're uploading an Excel sheet with a DAP Incoterm, that will automatically generate your forwarding order, your freight unit, and also the freight order itself. If you're uploading an Excel with the XWorks Incoterm, it'll generate your forwarding order, it will generate your freight unit, but you would have to manually generate the freight order. So it works the same, it just has different, as we can see here, instead of working with the Incoterms themselves, we're working with LOA and non-LOA. So once you know what these mean and what they stand for, it's the same as the process we saw yesterday. So basically, that would be the first step before we move on into TM. So the first thing we did was update the Excel load list, and now we're going to upload it into TM. So just give me a quick second while I manage to get Moja here on screen. Okay, so I already logged in. Basically, when we went to New York, we were still using this link here, the mass upload forwarding order, to upload the Excel. Now we just go directly into NWBC. So we click on Launch NWBC. Sometimes it may take a while, if you think it doesn't work because you've clicked on it maybe 10, 15 times and it still doesn't open. Eventually, just be patient, it will. Okay, and it will look like this here. So it opens a window like this one, and again you have to click on the link NWBC here, and that will open up the TM module. So now you see, yesterday we were looking at the screen. It looked a bit different because if you realize now it says here forwarding order management, freight order management, and planning. So the wording has changed. If we click on the tab for forwarding order management, we have a set of links here and things we can do. So we can look for our forwarding orders by date, just like we do in SRM if we know the date or the user who has created them. Leandro was going through that yesterday. We can also go through that later on if you guys want to see how that works. Or we can simply click on display forwarding order. If you know the forwarding order number by heart, you can always just click on this link here. But basically what we're looking to do now is the mass upload of forwarding order here. So this is what we're going to click on to upload the Excel we were just looking at before. So we're under the forwarding order management tab here, and then we click on mass upload of forwarding order. That'll take us to this screen. That is quite simple, very similar to ECC when we're uploading an Excel to, let's say, update equipment. And it works the same way. So you have execute in foreground, execute in background. So for this case, we would select execute in foreground, and that will automatically remove the bottom part of the section here. And then basically the file path. So we have the text file upload here, option selected, and the Excel file upload option non-selected here. So remember, we're uploading a text file, so we'll keep that one selected. And now what we're going to do is go looking for it. So basically, this is quite simple. We click on the matchbox, and this will display this window here. We select this icon here, which is called Import from Native File System. Again, I'm sure you're very, very familiar with this and how this works. And here, just make sure you select wherever it is that you have your text file in Excel. Of course, permit all access. And there are our files. So remember, we're selecting the one that is a text file. We select this one, and it'll show here. Now, once we have it here, we just make sure we select it. Once it shows here under file name, then we click on choose. And there it is. So we already have our file here. We can either test run it or directly execute this. So I'm just going to go to directly execute this. Menu, program, and execute. So I know that doesn't look that simple to know where you would click on execute. You also have a button here for execute. I haven't tried this one yet, but I'm sure it's going to work just the same. So we can just click on it, and the system will eventually let you know if what you've done has worked or not. So in this case, everything seems to be okay. You have a column here for messages, warning if there are any errors. We can see that based on the green light here that everything we've done is okay. If by any chance you had a red light, usually the red light shows at the top because once you have an error, it just doesn't let you proceed. If it was a red light, just click here on the I message button, and it'll tell you exactly what's wrong with the Excel. See, so in this case, list does not contain any data or any errors. If you do have one, it'll tell you what's wrong with your Excel. Just go back, make sure you change it, and then try again. If you see here the forwarding order number column, that displays that forwarding order that I was talking about. So it looks a lot like the DTR that we were looking at yesterday, but this is your forwarding order number. So you can take note of it or not. You can click on it directly here, and it'll take you directly to the forwarding order itself and the freight unit linked to it. And if this is a DAP Incoterm, you'll also see the freight order. So if you move on to the right, you'll see all the data that you've added into the Excel is exactly here, just the way it looked in the Excel itself. Okay, so everything is exactly the same. We know it's okay, so we could just simply double click on the forwarding order number, and that'll open another window, and we'll take a look at where that takes us. Leandro, question?
Yeah, I think we lost you for 5 seconds.
Okay, so for 5 seconds. What I said in those 5 seconds was simply if you want to access the forwarding order number, just click on it, double click on it, and that will automatically launch this new window where you can see the forwarding order number. And now we're back to exactly where we were yesterday. So basically what we're going to be doing from now on is exactly what we did yesterday with Leandro, and maybe we can play around a little more with the system. Now what will change eventually, instead of going into CCP today to submit the events, we can do it directly in TM, so that'll be a bit different. But this is going to be a very good refresher. Now before I move on, the Excel that I uploaded this time was DAP Incoterm, which would be LOA, should have generated not only the forwarding order here and not only the freight unit, but I should also have freight orders. Now sometimes they take a little while, so it could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So if they don't show up immediately, you could always just refresh, or as you navigate through the system, you'll see eventually how these freight orders will appear. If by any chance they don't appear, again, remember this is the training environment, you can always do it yourself. And how do you do that? Well, the same way you would do it if it was an XWorks Incoterm. So basically, this is the forwarding order for the DAP Incoterm. So I could always just close that. And if I wanted to upload another Excel with the XWorks, we can do that again. Now, is it quite clear how I uploaded the Excel, how I edited the fields in the Excel? Because this is really the new essential information that we're learning today, is that. Working with the Excel, playing around with the fields themselves, and then uploading it. So before I move on to TM and repeat what we did yesterday, maybe I want to see if anyone has any question or would like me to do it again, meaning editing the Excel and uploading it. No, nothing. We can just continue. Okay, perfect. I know you guys are a smart bunch, so this is quite easy. And basically, once you do one, you just have to upload nonstop. So let's see. Yesterday, I was working on uploading this Excel, so we would already have some freight orders just in case it took some while. So now, let's play around with the tabs that we have here, right? Because this is also important. Remember, click on the tabs, and you have different links that you can navigate to and see your forwarding orders. You also have the freight order management. So let's say you already know the freight orders. These have already been generated. You could go directly to your freight order, because you're not going to be eventually maybe not doing everything in one day, but you do half of the work one day, the next half the other day. So you can simply go directly to your freight order if you click on the freight order tab here, freight order management, and display your freight order. So just to give you an idea, if I click on display freight order, as yesterday I generated a freight order, you see there's a basic field here for freight order, and all you would do is just simply type in your freight order. Okay, let's get that out of the way. 6-1, okay. So freight orders usually start with 6-1, right? So yesterday I generated these freight orders, 3 zeros, 2 5, 3 3 7, and you click on continue or just simply click on enter, and that'll take you directly to your freight order. And you can work on this freight order directly simply by going into this, clicking on this link and then knowing your freight order number. So you see, basically, you can just navigate to whatever you're interested in. If you know the number, display freight order. If you don't know the number but have details that can link to that freight order, you can do that here in the overview freight orders. If you click on this link, you'll see that it basically looks a lot like SRM, so it's quite simple. I know yesterday Leandro showed you the change query. So this link is quite important. Let's say if you don't have your information here, which is normal because you haven't added any new data, you show the quick criteria maintenance just like with SRM. So you can add the data you do know, for example, the document type or destination location, source location. So just like when you're looking for a shopping cart in SRM, you would add your details here, created by, execution status, and so on. Click on apply, and then anything, all of the freight orders that are linked to that information would show up here on the bottom if you don't know your freight order by heart. If you click on change query, you'll have some other fields, just like Leandro was showing you yesterday, separated here by general data, document references, driver. If we scroll down, business partner, location, dates, and times. So there's plenty of ways for you to find your freight order or forwarding order or anything you're looking for with all these fields and all this information. If we look at here at the bottom where it says COE, this is the one we're interested in. It says forwarding order number. So if I add here my forwarding order number, for example, the one I generated yesterday, so let me see, it was 333, and click on apply, that should give me all the freight orders that were generated linked to that forwarding order. So there you go. See, so yesterday I did this, and we have our 3 freight orders that are linked to that forwarding order number I just added. And then you can just click on the number directly here, and that'll take you to your freight order. The window has opened somewhere else, but here it is. So basically, there's ways around it. If you know the freight order, you can just access it directly. If you don't, but you have your forwarding order number, you can always play around with the links and the fields, the search fields, apply, and find all the information that you're looking for. Yeah, so basically, that's important too, to understand how to work around these 3 tabs here. And then the last one here, planning. I believe, Leandro, you also went through this one yesterday, correct? So basically what we're looking at here is the transportation cockpit. So for the LOA scenario, the one that's DAP, again, the freight order should generate automatically. But for the one of non-LOA or XWorks, we would have to still go into transportation cockpit, which looks like this. And again, you have one for COE LOA DAP, which is, of course, not the one we're looking at. But let's say your freight orders, you're doing the exercise this afternoon, and 30 minutes have passed, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, and still the system is not generating your freight orders. You could always go here, select COE LOA DAP, click on Continue, and this will take you to the same screen it would take you to if you're looking at the non-LOA or the XWorks Incoterm. If there's anything pending, if there's a freight unit that is pending to still get the transportation proposal done for, it would show here. In this case, it's not showing me any, which means that everything should be generated automatically. So we can close this one. And again, remember, transportation cockpit. And what we would be using this one for, if everything works properly, is only for the non-LOA or the XWorks scenario, which would be this one here. COE non-LOA XWorks. Click on Continue, and that'll take us to the same screen as we were before, but now we should have a set of freight units that still need to be managed, right? The transportation for those freight units still need to be managed. And there you go. So now we have a list of freight units that need transportation proposals. So basically it works just like we saw yesterday, but this is for contingency owned equipment. And again, the nomenclature is here, LOA, and what it means in terms of Incoterm is right next to it. So basically up to there, everything is the same as yesterday. So let's go back now and see our forwarding order. So let's say that I do have, and now in this case, just to get a little more interaction, because I think that you guys are following quite well. If I want, and you guys can either write this in the chat or speak up. If I wanted to, now that I already have my forwarding order number, right? I took note of it. I want to find it. I want to see it. Where would I go to find my forwarding order number? I'm going to give just 30 seconds to see if someone can tell me where would I navigate to. And if you want to just speak up, let me know and I can just unmute you. But I want to see who's following. Okay, so very good. Okay, thank you, Adrian. So FOM, which would be forwarding order management. Okay, so I would go to the tab here for forwarding order management. And now where? I have a ton of links here that I can get lost looking for things. So where would I go if I know the number by heart, let's say, or I have it written down on a piece of paper? Display, very good. Okay, so forwarding order, display forwarding order. Basically, that opens up another window. And also, all these windows that you see keep popping open. Eventually, you could end up having 20 different windows open and be lost between a forwarding order, a freight unit, and then you don't know what you're looking at. So always keep control of the amount of windows that you're opening. And here you go, forwarding order. So we would basically just write the number. So our forwarding orders here start with 21, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 3, and we click on enter. I think I'm probably missing a 3 here. I think so. There you go. Okay, so there's our forwarding order number, and we see here that it has the freight orders that have been generated automatically. So there you go. There's our number, forwarding order number here, our freight unit as we saw yesterday. And do we remember what the freight unit stood for? What does that mean? What does that number represent, let's say? Or what does freight unit represent? When Leandro was explaining yesterday and he said we can combine freight units into a freight order. What does that mean, really? We're combining freight units. Okay, so if I don't get a quick answer, I'll answer it myself. So the freight unit is everything you can ship together, correct? So everything, let's say, in terms of source location, destination location, the dates are also important. So if you could combine things that are going to the same place, leaving not on the same dates, but at least in a range of 7 days, that you can combine into a freight order. Okay, so the freight unit is everything you can ship at once. So basically this freight unit we have here that we just uploaded for the contingency owned equipment, if there is another freight unit when we're looking at the transportation cockpit, we can combine more than one if they're going, of course, to the same destination location and if the date range is within the 7 days. And we'll see, we could play around with that. I'm not sure if the training environment is still working 100% in terms of actually combining it into one single freight order, but eventually that is the purpose of the transportation management, right, is to do that. So again, remember, the forwarding order has been generated once we have uploaded our Excel. That automatically generates our freight unit, which is everything we can ship at once, and that generates itself the freight orders, but only when the Incoterm is DAP, or as we saw yesterday with Leandro, the FCA, right? So the part that is related to the vendors would be generated automatically, but the ones that the UN would manage, we'd have to manage ourselves. So in this case, we have our freight orders here starting by 6-1, freight units starting by 4-1, and the forwarding order starting by 2-1, which, if I'm not mistaken, they told us in New York that this number may change and start by 1-5, but still, that's not important for us now. Okay, so basically, those are quick things I wanted to go over, so we remember that these things are quite important. And if we keep moving on, all these numbers and data and nomenclatures keep coming up, and then eventually we don't know where we are anymore. Okay, so basically now let's go back to our PowerPoint and see what would be the next step. Okay, so we know that the first part is done completely, and we go into the planning stage. So we can definitely go through this Excel quickly because we already did this in the system, so forgive me for just skipping through this, but I think it's much better if we see it in the system, and the couple of things that we just discussed is exactly what we're looking at now in this these slides here in this PowerPoint. So here we go. Let's focus on the planning part, and as you see here, we're also looking at the Troops Contributing Country Stage, or LOA, which is the one we were looking at in the system now, the one that generates the freight orders automatically. So what happens here? It's in TM. The system creates the FOs automatically. Okay, the Umoja system assigns the carrier to the FOs. We can take a look at that right now. Leandro went through that yesterday, but I'm sure it will help if we look at it again. And now there is another box here that I just showed up here that says TM Planner Manage FOs. So what does that mean? So if I'm saying at the top here that the Umoja system is assigning carrier to the FOs, then why am I here TM Planner says Manage FOs? That's because even though the system does it automatically, as a TM Planner, you could still go and make changes to these FOs. And what did the FOs stand for? What does FO mean, freight order as Leandro was explaining yesterday, these are legs, right? So let's say we're traveling from A to D, an FO would be A to B, B to C, and then C to D. So you could have 3 different freight orders, each one representing one separate leg. Maybe you just have 1 leg, maybe you have 2 legs, 3 legs. So that's what that means, right? It's pretty much a distance, right? If when you're buying a plane ticket on a website and it tells you have a layover, for example, from Valencia to London, London to New York. So Valencia, London would be 1 freight order, London, New York would be another freight order. So these are legs, right? The destination, the source location and destination location that we're going to every time. So I think that defines it quite easily. So these things can be changed by a TM planner, even though they're done automatically in the system. So that's what this stands for here. When it says TM planner can manage FOs, that's what that means. And okay, well, went a little quick. So this is the easy part for the LOA scenario. The system pretty much does it all. Sorry, and if you have to, then the TM planner would manage the FOs. Okay, so we can go through this slide quickly, as it's very similar to what we saw yesterday, but nevertheless, let's go through it quickly, and then I'll see if there are any questions. So in a scenario, the one we're looking at here, TCC stage applies to DAP Incoterm. So we see here at the top, LOA. So we're looking at LOA, DAP Incoterm. The system automatically creates the freight order used to report all events related to the transportation that is completely managed by the troops contributing country. Based on the transportation network or master data, the system will select the default routes. So that's what we were talking about. The system also automatically assigns the business partner details as carrier. We also discussed that. And these automatically created freight orders are in ready for execution status directly. We saw that with Leandro yesterday, and we're going to go now into the system and see that as well. And then here, should the automatically created freight orders differ from the business partner's actual route, the TM planner can delete and recreate them to reflect the real route and to facilitate the insertion of events at a later stage. So that's what I was talking about when I was saying the TM planner can manage DFOs. Okay, so basically that's the information we were looking at. We're going to be sending you guys this PowerPoint as well as soon as the WebEx session is over, so that'll also help you understand. So before we go into the system and look at both LOA and non-LOA, let's review what the non-LOA steps were. So this would work just like yesterday for the XWorks and FCA scenarios. We would select the freight units in the TM cockpit. We would generate the proposals, or actually Umoja would generate the proposals. We, as the TM planner, would select the best proposal based on either distance, if it's sea, if it's by airplane, if it's the cheapest, the most expensive. So that would be up to us to select the best proposal. This system would calculate estimated charges and then eventually generate the freight orders and also the SOW as we saw yesterday. Now these estimated charges, eventually, these are all for reporting, basically reporting purposes, to make a comparison between the actual charges that we'll see eventually once we hand in the SOW to PD and the freight shopping cart is created, and then we link, as we saw yesterday in TM, the freight PO to the actual freight order. There would be a comparison in terms of reporting between the estimated charges and the actual charges so that eventually the UN can understand or have a better understanding of how much it's costing us, right, to transport these materials. So basically, that would be, sorry for, I went there too quick. That would basically be the planning stage for both the TCC stage LOA and the freight forwarder stage non-LOA. Basically just as yesterday. The only thing that was different was the load list that we saw at the beginning. So let's go back into the system and start navigating through the tabs so we understand these concepts and we can play around in the system, which is always more helpful. Okay, any questions before I move on? All okay, perfect. And no one else is mentioning anything else. Perfect. Okay, so let's move on then. So what we do have on screen here, again, it's the forwarding order. And what we're looking at, always pay attention that here at the top, the window is telling you what's ruling the information that you're looking at, right? So in this case, we're looking at the forwarding order. If I click on the freight unit, again, it will open another window. So again, remember, pay attention to all the windows you're opening here. I know you saw this yesterday, but it's only the second day. So again, it's just a reminder. Here at the top, what we see is the freight unit 41763. So that is directly linked to the one we're looking at here in the back. So we could always just move this over, and I can click on this freight order here, and that will open up another window. So now, right now, I have 3 windows open, all linked to the same forwarding order, but of course, all led by different documents. This one is led by the freight order, the other one is the forwarding order, and this third one here is the freight unit. So you see what I mean when I say it could get confusing. Always pay attention to what you're looking at and what's leading your information, because the tabs change and the details in each of these tabs change as well. So you may be looking for something and spending a lot of time looking for something that you think you can't find, and it's because you're looking at the wrong document. Okay, so let's just make our lives easier here, and let's close these windows and go one by one. So again, let's remember the forwarding order, just like we saw yesterday for the DTR. Remember that the tabs are here at the top, and if we go all the way to the right, we have a folder that if we click on, we have other tabs that may not be visible in one shot. As we see here, the last one is statuses, while here after statuses, we still have 2 more tabs. So let's see what the forwarding order tells us. So we have a general data tab. And again, if you scroll down at the bottom, you'll always see the items that have been included in this forwarding order. There's always a sort of a summary of what's been included here. Yesterday, we saw when Leandro was doing the packing that what was leading your item list was the actual packing, right? It was telling you if these items were packed or not. In this case, what we see is a load list. So in this sense, all these vehicles or vehicle trailers, break bulks, containers, everything that's in this Excel sheet for contingency owned equipment is sort of packed in a load list. So you understand what you're looking at here. At the top, what we have is basically that: general data, the forwarding order data, the document type, the date that this order was created, the MOU, reference number here, and the goods value. So some of our general terms here. For example, we don't see here, for the settlement terms, we see the Incoterm that we're looking at. So basically, it's that. It's general data related to what's in this Excel. Let's look at the Business Partner tab. And again, as we saw yesterday here, we have the information related to the business partner, so the shipper and consignee. This is all information that was extracted from the Excel, and the details related to it here following to the right. And always with the items at the bottom. So if we scroll here, we'll see only the items at the top. This is all the information we have. Locations, date, and times, well, we'll display exactly that. Where the equipment is leaving from and where it's going to. Dates and times, as we see here, request pickup date, as we put in the Excel, January 30th, and here it'll should arrive on March 15th. The actual route. Okay, so here we have our stages. These automatically generated since it's DAP. From source location, destination location, the times and dates. So all this has been done by the system automatically. So you can just look at this and review the actual route details. Now, if we wanted to make any changes to this, because remember, as a TM planner, we could make the changes. So let's say we've been told that the routes have changed, or the routes that were actually generated by the system are completely incorrect. We could always just edit the information on the screen here by clicking on the Edit button at the top, and then making the necessary changes here to the city or the source location. Okay, so we have our information here, destination location, Jakarta port, and wait, I'm clicking a bit too much, and here is our matchbox. So we could always make the changes to any of these legs manually, even though these have been generated automatically. Okay, once we're done and we made the changes, all we would have to do is just simply save, or if we say, oh, you know what, I made a mistake, we'll just cancel. So that's quite easy. So basically, pay attention to the top here. We have some information in terms of saving, canceling, editing, copying data, refreshing, and also follow-up, which if I don't know if we saw this one yesterday or not, Leandro, the follow-up button here at the top. If you wanted to, let's say we're looking at an XWorks, right? We could actually go and look at the XWorks later on. We can go directly to the cockpit from here. So if we go to the follow-up button here, the transportation cockpit, we would see that we have a forwarding order number. We would see that we have a freight unit, but we don't have our freight orders generated. We just go to follow-up, start transportation cockpit, and that'll take us to the screen where we would start planning the actual transportation manually. So that's just a quick, let's say, backdoor to, instead of navigating all the way back to the beginning and closing all our windows. Okay, so basically we have our document flow tab, which we're familiar with already, and what's leading. So whatever document is leading will always be at the top. The charges, which would be the estimated charges in this case, because we haven't yet received the actual charges. The notes. From the events, remember we were looking at this yesterday with the events that were submitted, any of the attachments. We have more tabs here, but basically what's important to us, if we want, we can look at the status tab here, which would tell us already planned, and this was explained also yesterday. So I'm really not going to go over it unless you guys want me to, or if we have any other questions. I think we do have something here. Okay. So we have here, opening multiple windows will reduce performance in BC. Are there any restrictions to the number of windows we can open? Okay, well, actually, we haven't been restricted yet, and we've had at least, I don't know, 20 windows open at once.
Yeah, so I read the question, and I have been searching something. So the limitation is more in the configuration of the server, but I'm doing some tests, okay, so maybe we can give you the answer by the end of the session in case we find the maximum amount of windows. But as Brian was saying, we have tried to open at least 20 different windows, and we didn't have any problem. But maybe we can give you the exact number of sessions. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Leandro, and thanks, Adrian. Okay, so yes, good idea. So let's take a break. I think it's the perfect time for a break. It's, I think, 6 minutes past 10. So we'll take a 5-minute break like we did yesterday, and we'll be right back. Hello, everybody. So we're back, And flash news here. It's Leandro's birthday today. If anybody wants to say happy birthday to him.
Thank you, Brian.
He just told me. So, and Adrian, we've opened up to 30, what was it, 35 windows, and something did crash after 35, but we're not sure it's because it was 35 or any other reason. But at least up to 35 windows we could open. Okay, so let's now go back and see. We were looking at the forwarding order and the tabs, exactly. Okay. Let me just, Leandro, could you mute yourself? Just, okay, because there's an echo there I can hear. Okay, remember the output management tab we were looking at yesterday as well. In this case, it's not important in the forwarding order document. You'll see that some of the tabs, as I was mentioning before, have a lot more importance depending on the document that you're looking at. So in this case, we were looking at the forwarding order, and the output management tab here is not really that relevant as it's going to be with another document, as could be the freight order. So basically, we can navigate back to the document flow and look at the freight units. But I believe this is something that you guys can look at in your own time doing the exercise. If there are any questions or things that you've seen while you're navigating through the tabs, it's something we could address maybe later on today or even tomorrow or even in the session on Thursday. So please take some time to look through all the tabs, all the information that's provided, because I want to go into the transportation management to the cockpit and start arranging the transportation management as we did yesterday. I know that we only did it once and it was quite quick. For Leandro and I, it's already something that we've done tons of times, so it seems easy enough. But for those of you who are just seeing the system now, it could not be, it probably is not that easy. So let's get out of this forwarding order, which was for DAP, and we'll go looking for the other forwarding order that was for XWorks, the one we're going to have to generate the freight order for manually. Okay, so again, forwarding order management tab, display forwarding order in this case because I already know the freight forwarding order number, sorry. And here we'll just insert the number. In this case it's 332. And here we go. So in this case, this is the one I also generated yesterday for XWorks. So you can see here, just in case, there's always information with the details, right? It says here non-LOA, freight unit. So you already know that this is not, this is an XWorks Incoterm and not a DAP. So how was it that I could directly go into the transportation cockpit if I don't want to close this window, navigate through the tabs again at the beginning? There was a quick shortcut I could go through. Can anybody tell me? Let's see if you can either write it in the chat or speak up. Where could I go if I just wanted to quickly link from this screen to the transportation cockpit? Okay, so that's follow up, click on number. Okay, very good. So if we click on these numbers, right, these documents, that'll just take us to this document and we can see the different tabs and the data linked to these documents. But if I want to go to transportation cockpit, very well, we would go to follow up and start transportation cockpit. Again, that'll open another window, which I'm dragging over here. That'll take us right to the transportation cockpit that we saw earlier in this session. In our case here, we're looking at COE non-LOA and click on continue. We select it, click on continue. And now, again, I went very quick and I didn't even look at my freight unit number, right? And the screen that I was before, we could always just navigate back to that screen, display forwarding order, which is here, and there it is. Okay, so it's 762, and then we could go always back here and look for our number. We could just scroll up and down here and look for our number, or we could use this nice search box here. Now, Leandro was explaining this yesterday. Now, there's tons of things we could look at. There could be a WebEx session just on how many things we can do in this screen here. One of the things that I found interesting is that this could look quite tiny here. So you could always just maximize any of these screens. If you click on the button here at the top, and now see this becomes quite easier to look at. And now we're only looking at one of these windows. If I minimize it, we're back to what we were looking at before. So just so you don't go blind too quick, click on the expand button here, and we have all our freight units. And now we're only looking at one screen at a time. You could always play around with this and set it up with whatever way works better for you. You have the requirement document or the MOU reference here as well, the loading location, the unloading location, the earliest date here, the latest date to deliver. So you have all the details that you need right here in all these columns. So let's search for our number here. I know that my freight unit was 4112345762, and we click on enter. And now it should highlight, and there you go, it did, all the way at the bottom, it highlighted my freight unit number here. Okay, so now, if I wanted to combine freight units, now in this case we have tons because of course this is a training environment, so we're just generating a bunch of them. If we wanted to combine freight units, here is where we would do it. If we wanted to combine freight, no, still not. Hold on. Sometimes it disappears, but it comes back. I'm back, right? Okay, perfect. Okay, so I was just testing the audio here. If we wanted to combine the freight units, this would be the point to do it at, right? We would select more than one of these freight units. Again, remember, they would have to have the same destination location, and also the dates of delivery should not be further than 7 days apart. So we select our freight unit here, the one we want to manage. And let's see, I'm going to give another 5 seconds maybe or less to tell me what is the button we have to click on to start managing transportation after I select my freight unit. I also have to find the soundtrack for a clock going tick, 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 tick. All right, so no answer, so I'm going to go myself. We select the freight unit, and then remember here, transportation proposals. Okay, thanks, Adrian, but it was transportation proposals. And we click on that one. And that'll take us now to a screen that we saw yesterday, where the system is providing us a list of transportation proposals. Exactly, just like when you're on a website looking for flights and you mention your source location or destination location, and you have tons of different options. And of course, you don't get this when you're booking your flights, but here you go. Let's just go back and see. Let me go and do this again. So I'm going back to the cockpit. That was a bit strange that there was a server error here. Hopefully it doesn't do this time around. So I'm just going to go quickly through the steps we went before. And I'll look for my freight unit here. Again, there it is. And now transportation proposals. And hopefully now it doesn't time out. Still taking a little longer than it's supposed to. And there we go. Okay, so here are transportation proposals layout. Just as we saw yesterday, you could always just expand the options here to see. So you have all these transportation proposal 1, 2, 3, and so on, all the way up to 10. So in this case, oh, actually we have more. Okay, 12, 13. So each one of these proposals should have different combinations in terms of the means of transportation and also let's say the legs in between the source and destination locations. These are also, and here's where we couldn't see the scroll down, but oh, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to scroll to the right so we can see all the way to the right and scroll back up. Remember that these could always be sorted based on what we want to look at, what's important for us. Let's say cost is what's important for us, so I would look for the cheapest, even if I have to stop and it takes twice as long and the distance is twice as long. I could always just look at the duration or any other thing that is what really is important for me in terms of what makes me decide for transportation proposal 1, 2, or 3. Let's say I'm only going to look at transportation proposal 1, and I see here that we have 1, 2, and 3 rows. And what do each one of these mean? We saw yesterday, and let me scroll back to the left so I can see everything there. We saw yesterday that we had this what looks like envelopes, right, with a green check mark. And we saw with the FCA Incoterm that the system showed you not only these possibilities that you had to select from, but also the ones that the system had already done automatically, right, for the vendor. So in this case, we only have the ones that haven't been planned because this is an Xworks Incoterm, so we have to do it all ourselves manually. We see here that this is the main transportation from Jakarta port to Dar es Salaam port. It's quite far, I couldn't read it. It will be done by sea. See, actually at the top, the main means of transportation will always show here at the top. We have C here, C for transportation 2, same thing for 3, 4. So I could always collapse all these selections, and if I wanted to choose air, I would just look for the one for air and select that one. Well, you see that the majority here all start with C, then we have some truck, C and truck. But the main means of transportation will always be leading this the group. Okay, and also source, destination, and source, destination. So in this case, what does this tell me? That there will be 1, 2, and 3 freight orders, which means legs, right? The truck first will go from our source location to Jakarta, then the main means of transportation, and then the final to our final destination. So let's say that the first option is the one I like the most. Just to move on, you would select it here in the checkbox, and then you would accept planning. We click on accept planning, and as we saw yesterday, now it'll take us back to the screen we were at before, and it'll show us the 3 freight orders based on what we were selecting in the transportation proposals. You can do the same with this window as we did before. We can expand and really look carefully at everything that we have selected and that has been proposed. And once it's all clear and okay for us, we can just minimize and again, just accept by saving. Remember, if you don't save, you haven't generated any transportation proposals. Okay, so basically, this is what we saw yesterday, but I know this is mainly the main reason for this module is to manage your transportation proposals. And this is really just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more that you can do here. There's a lot more you can play around with in the system. So we can just save, make sure that our freight orders are now generated. And if we go back to our document, we will see that now we should have, see, right now we only have a forwarding order and the freight unit. And if we refresh, we should have our freight orders, here you go, that generate right below. Each one of these a different leg. And as Leandro mentioned yesterday as well, if you look at the business partner column, right now they're all dummy carrier. Okay, by default, the system gives you these this nomenclature for the carriers. Because why is that? Because eventually we still have to go and do what? Create the freight PO to have the actual carrier, the actual charges, the actual dates. So right now all we're doing till this point is just estimating. we're estimating the routes, we're estimating the transportation and the means that we're going to use, we're estimating how much it's going to cost us, estimating the kilometers duration. Pretty much all we've done so far is just an estimation. And this is something that we discussed in depth in New York with some of our students, wondering, of course, why all this process if eventually it's just an estimation and the actual figures are not going to come to us until the freight forwarders are going to tell us exactly what the routes are going to be, what it's going to cost, and how we're going to transport this equipment. So basically, as I said at the beginning, what we're trying to do here is have a comparison of reports with data that will compare the actual distance, actual charges to the estimated charges that we have in our master data. So eventually what we're doing is creating a large database of information so that the UN can eventually save on cost in the future when managing transportation for its equipment. So basically, right now, all we have is just an estimation, and that's all we've done so far. Now, once you become familiar with the system, this is done really quick. Actually, when Leandro and I try to do this as quick as possible, it doesn't take us more than 5–10 minutes to do the entire process. Okay, so now that we have this, let's go back to our PowerPoint and see what would be our next step. Any questions? Okay. So basically, this is where we left off, and now we would go into the procure freight stage. Okay, so we did see the slides we were looking at into the system, so I'm just going to skip through quickly. You guys are going to have this in your inbox this afternoon, so you could always take a look at this information, but so far it would be the same as we have seen yesterday. So I'm just going to move on to the freight procurement stage. And quite some slides here and quite some information. Oh, we didn't look at the SOW. We can take a look at that now. Okay, so the procure freight stage, if you guys see here at the top, again, only focusing on the non-LOA, of course, for the X-Works, because the DAP, we don't need to do that. The troops contributing country would take care of that transportation. So again, this would be the same process as yesterday. We'd have to create the shopping cart for freight, approve the shopping cart, select the shopping cart from the sourcing cockpit, create the solicitation, and again, as Leandro mentioned yesterday as well, the process is the same as it is now. Nothing has changed here. But remember, you would have to still create the shopping cart for freight, at least for the scenario for non-LOA. And now once the PO for freight has been approved, eventually that's where the next step would come in, which is the part here at the bottom, is where we're going to have to link the information, right? So we're going to be linking the data. Now we have the SOW document that we got from TM for the X-Works scenario. We have the actual charges, actual dates, but now of course we have to tell TM what this information is. So we have to link this data. So let's go quickly through these slides. We won't waste much time here because we saw this yesterday. And this is the main part here. In TM, eventually we're going to have to assign the carrier and PO to the FO. So this is where this becomes quite critical, right? We assign the information that we just confirmed here in SRM to TM. So we're linking these two because they're not automatically linked. This is something we also discussed in New York, that why isn't it automatically linked? If we already know that in SRM we have a PO for freight approved, why doesn't TM directly link that data and directly update the carrier, the actual dates, the actual charges? And we were told that probably in the future, eventually, that'll be the case. Personally, I believe that the less we have to manually edit, the better. Because here, the TM FO manager would have to edit the FO with the routes, dates, and charges. So these are extra steps that we're not going to go through because they would take some time. But here's where the actual changes would happen. Remember at the beginning, we had here the estimated charges. Here, Umoja calculates the charge estimate. And now, of course, we would be linking these estimated to the actual based on what we got now from SRM. So basically, that's Quite simple. We could go and actually do the assignment of the carrier and PO to FO if we want to, just to refresh our memories from yesterday. But I'm going to go through it quite quickly so we can go into submitting events in TM, yeah, which would be our last part here in the execute and monitor. Okay, so in the meantime, while I move back to the screen, if there are any questions, let me know. We can go to the forwarding order here. So basically, how would we do this? Now I could ask that question and give you guys maybe 5 seconds to give me a quick answer. How would I now do exactly that? Assign the carrier and PO to FO. So let's say we could assign, let's say there's a different carrier for each leg, which is very possible. So we could do it individually, or we could just assign the same carrier to the 3. Of course, our scenarios are always these perfect scenarios where everything is fine, and the same carrier would do the entire transportation. So what we did yesterday, I believe Leandro linked the carrier to all 3 of them. So let's do that. So I haven't had an answer on how to do that, so I'm just going to go myself. So let's close this screen and go back. Here you go. So basically we have our freight order management tab, planning and forwarding order management. So what we're looking at is the freight order management tab, and we went to overview freight orders. And why are we doing that? Because what we're looking at in this case is that we want to link a carrier to all 3 of our freight orders. The best way to find out all the freight orders that are linked together in one freight unit would be to look by the forwarding number or the MOU reference number, right? Because if now we would have to go one by one for every freight order and assign the carrier individually one by one, which we could do without a problem. We could assign that as well, and we can actually do it from the document itself. But let's look at this quickly and see how we did this yesterday, right? So we have the overview of freight orders. We click on Change Query, and we would scroll all the way here to the bottom and make sure that we have our forwarding order number here, which would be 332. And apply, and that should show us all the freight orders that are linked to that forwarding order number. And here you go. So just like we did yesterday, we have our 3 freight orders. We would select them all and then assign a carrier to all of them separately. So how did we do that? We make sure they're all selected, and then here where we see subcontracting, we see here send to carrier, carrier selection, assign carrier, and assign carrier and SRM freight PO. That's the one we're interested in here. We click on that, and then we would assign a carrier here. We could look at the matchbox, but I believe if I just type 1, maybe it's we can get. No, I'm not lucky enough here. Okay, so we could always just. Oh, here it is. Okay, now. Right away, I have the ones that we've been adding lately, so I'm just going to select one of the ones that we've already selected before, which I don't see Kuehne+Nagel here, right? But we could assign, what about this one? Okay, we could assign this carrier, and again, the freight PO. Since SRM and TM are not connected, we could just add here any number. In this case, we could add this freight PO number here. Eventually, of course, when we're doing this, we would have to link the actual freight PO number and the actual carrier number here, and click on OK. And that would link this carrier and freight PO to all 3 of these freight orders. You see here, everything's OK, and everything works fine. So if I navigate to my freight order directly from here, but just by clicking on it, I should see that the carrier assigned is the one that I just added now. And here you go. See, I'm looking at my freight order, non-LOA, the number here, under business partner, carrier, there it is, the one I just added now. Let's say that for some reason, as things happen in real life, something happens and now our freight forwarder has changed, but only for one leg, only for one freight order. So let's say for this one, it's going to be a different carrier. You could always change it individually. So the other two would still remain with the one we added, but here we could always click on Edit and make changes to this carrier here and say, you know what, instead of this one, now we're changing it to a different carrier. And we would search for a carrier here, make sure that we add the correct one. Let me see if I have also 111, if there are any options that show here. 74. Anyway, we would just select the new one, click on Save, and that would automatically make the change to the new carrier. Okay, so basically you can assign to 3 different freight orders all the PO for freight all at once, or you could do it individually one by one, just by accessing the document and adding. Yes, Leandro.
Yeah, sorry, Brian. One thing that we also learned, right, in New York was about, because we got the answer about, because here in that screen we are seeing the BP of the carrier, right? But we also assigned the freight PO, okay? But it's not very easily found in the freight order, even though it's there in the document, because we assign it manually. But the thing is that maybe we can show it also to them so that they can also find where they can find the freight PO. And also we show to them how to personalize the different tabs, right, in the freight order.
Okay, yes, thanks, Leandro. Yes, exactly. We can also change that. It's not that easy, and let's see if we can remember how this is done, right? And we're in the correct tab to see the business partner and also to view the PO for freight. It's the business partner.
So that it wasn't that easy, right? So there was a way to personalize. I think it's that because by personalizing the views, we can. It's not that one. Maybe
No,
the other one.
This one here.
Personalize. Yeah. So from there, I think we can show other, right? So those are the ones, the tabs that are displayed, but I think we can add more, right?
Yes. So as Leandro is saying here, we have the first, whatever shows here under stack 1 is what we can see. See general data, business partner, items, stages, and so on. These are the tabs that are here at the top. If we scroll down, we will see that the last one is output management and there's nothing else. So it seems like there's really nothing else to add. But if we click here on add, we'll see now there's another window that opens and shows you another set of tabs that are not visible. So you could always just select something, like for example the map, overview, service orders, or anything you're interested in. In this case, what we're looking at here, I think it's called related documents.
Yes. So go down a little bit. I think it was go down, overview, or maybe go to the beginning, change documents, or yeah.
Okay, we can see, so we select this option, and once it's highlighted, we click on OK. And we're still not done yet, because if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see that change documents shows here with a number 2. So of course, we want to have this showing as number 1, and all we have to do is select it and move it up here with the arrow. Now it's part of our number 1 stack here. So it should be visible once I click on Save.
So I think it was already part of our. I think it's because document references was already showing there. I mean, at least we showed to you there are some tabs, because in the if you click on document references, I think that's where we can see the freight PO. But at least we showed to them how to add, because there are some tabs that are not visible by default to the user. So if they go to personalize, because maybe some users will start asking about how they can see some tabs that are not visible. But so by personalizing the view for the freight order, they can add additional tabs.
Okay, yes. Thanks, Leandro. That's definitely very useful. So our document references tab, we had already added it, I guess, before, so it was already there. And we see here, this is the freight PO number that is linked to this freight order. So we see it here. This can also be changed again. So if we do have to make any changes, even after we've assigned the freight PO number and the carrier, this can be done. Okay, and it can be done one by one. It doesn't have to be all together, because of course we are scenarios here where that one freight forwarder was doing everything, but if it's not the case, we could always do it individually. Okay, so thank you, Leandro. So basically, now that we have almost 15 minutes left, I think yesterday we looked at CCP and the way to submitting events in CCP. Today we're going to look at how to do that in TM. It's quite simple and similar, but of course it's always worth a look. So let's go back to the document flow here, and also just to finish up, I'm going to go to the PowerPoint first and make sure that we know where we stand. Okay, so we have already seen the Excel load list, we've planned, and we've procured freight here. So we're at the last stage, execute and monitor for both scenarios, LOA and non-LOA. And let's look at, okay, we've seen this slide already. So let's see for the TCC stage LOA, this would be or can be done in TM. So the TM planner here would update the events and upload any attachments directly into TM, as we see here. Yesterday we looked at CCP, but in this case we have the TM planner updating and uploading events. And for the freight forwarder stage, non-LOA, we'd have, and we can go through this quite quickly here, and just so we can see the last part of our end-to-end process flow here. And then we can do this one step at a time in the actual system. Let's go back. So basically, this is what we're going to be looking at now. For the TCC stage, LOA, let's say that the troops contributing country is not submitting the events in CCP, so the TM planner would submit these events for the troops contributing country in TM. Yeah, so basically updating events and uploading attachments. The freight forwarder, in this case, could update the events in CCP, as we saw yesterday for the vendor and also the freight forwarder, could update the events in CCP and upload attachments in CCP, and the same thing can be done by the TM planner in TM for the freight forwarder. So basically, the TM planner could update events for both the troops contributing country and the freight forwarder in TM. And since for this particular case, there are two options for the TM planner to submit events for both the freight forwarder and the troops contributing country, we're going to be looking at that. Okay, so we're going to go back into TM and we're going to start updating events and see how we could upload attachments in TM. So here we go. We're back to our TM window, and we see here from the top that we're looking at the freight order non-LOA. So basically, we should be able to submit events for this leg. We have one of the legs open here, which is 5403, and we see here that this is the one, particularly if we don't understand exactly what leg this one is, if we go to execution, and yes, okay, my memory is working fine. The execution tab under the freight order will allow you to submit events for that particular leg. So if we see here, we have the handover document would be the first event that we have to submit. So you understand this window a little better. The first things we see here are the actual events that are supposed to, or what are known as expected events, or planned events. So all these events that show here, loading begin, loading end, departure, these and the ones that we see if we scroll down, are all events that are supposed to happen, okay, based on what we're transporting, where we're going, the actual stage that we're in. So everything here is supposed to be expected. So if we just select each one of these lines and just click on report event, that will submit an event that is considered expected in TM. And now we'll take a look at that. If the event is not here, and let's say we add the event, we insert an event, that will automatically stand here as an unexpected event, something that wasn't expected to happen. Also, if we do add an event, even if we insert an event that is exactly the same as the ones that we see here, for example, this loading begin, if by any chance we inserted an event and selected loading begin again, the system would interpret that what you're doing is submitting an unexpected event. Okay, so you have an idea, all the events we see here are expected. If they're not here, they're going to be unexpected. So like, how do we submit events here? So let's say the handover document, we see that the status here shows as it's not been submitted yet. You have the details and the information that follow. You can also see at the bottom here where it says execution and notes, but let's look at execution here. We have the event, handover document, event reason, event code. We also have the actual event date. So let's make some changes here. So let's say that the handover document, everything went fine here. All we would have to do is just select this line and go report event. That should automatically, see, populate all the data underneath here under execution and change that yellow triangle to a green square saying everything was as planned. The actual event date shows here and recorded directly in this document. So we see that this part has been done with no issues. Let's still take a look at this first one, handover document, and go to note. And here's where we would insert a note. If we need to add any type of note, for example, text type here, execution comment, the language itself, and the content of our note. Okay, and who created it. We could also add the information on who created it, or really you don't need to. As you see, you already have submitted one of the notes. Now, these notes, let's say if we're submitting events for the freight forwarder, the freight forwarder could log into CCP and be able to see the note that we've added for the event that we've submitted. So eventually there could be a back and forth between the freight forwarder submitting events from one side and the TM planner submitting events from another side. So the two systems are talking to each other. If this were for the troops contributing country and the TM planner submitting events, then you would be the only one submitting events and, of course, having access to these notes. So basically, these notes could be for the TM planner to just make sure that he or she doesn't want to forget something, or they could be used as communication between two systems, between the TM planner and the freight forwarder. Okay, we can go back to the execution tab here and see that we move on to the next actual event. And now we're going to make maybe a change here, or we're going to try and see if we can report something that wasn't expected or some sort of issue here. So let's see the event reason, loading begin, everything is fine. You can't really make any changes to that because these are all supposed to be expected. So the event itself is going to happen. So the event reason, say, well, we can always say loading, or we don't have to add anything else to that. We don't have to add a code either, and now we could always add the actual date. So let's say it was yesterday in this case. And then we could always just click on report the event, and we'll see that that should also, see, automatically submit this as an expected event. So we've already submitted 2 expected events. We really haven't made any changes. We've added a note, sort of communication between 2 systems. We can also delete the note that we've added by selecting it and clicking on the bin here. But now let's add an unexpected event. Instead of reporting an event here, we're going to click on insert event. If we click on insert event, automatically you see here the status, the symbol changes. Instead of a triangle for something that hasn't been submitted yet, or a green square that says that everything's okay, now it shows directly as unexpected event. We select the event from the drop down, and as you can see, you can actually select the same actual event that was already there as expected. See, loading begin. I could actually select loading begin. We have loading begin here, and this, depending on the data I add here, for example, the location, event reason, we could add information here or simply just report this event. It shows input location is mandatory. See, so the system will tell you what you're missing. So we can add the input location here in Jakarta or any other and report the event. And this will show here, you see the two first ones are okay in green, and the last one here, the one that we just added, would be added as unexpected because it's been additionally added to the list. So even though it's loading begin, it's still here as unexpected. Now this doesn't make much sense why we would have two type of events that are named exactly the same. What does make more sense is that if we insert an event from the drop down, what we're inserting is something that has been unexpected, right? For example, like a delay or damage. These are the events that we should be selecting in terms of submitting an unexpected event. So a delay would be one of the best options to submitting an unexpected event here. And here we would indicate where this delay occurred, right, in Jakarta port. We would also explain, maybe give the reasons. Driver arrived 2 hours late. We could always add something here, either here event reason, or we could add it in the notes and say here event reason for the delay was, I don't know, flat. And then we would report this event. Here we go. So we select the delay one, and then we could add a note here and say that the driver arrived 2 hours late in the note. So the type of text type and the content always add flat. So basically that's how you would submit events in TM. It's quite simple. I think the actual interface for CCP may be a little more attractive than this one. But remember, here what we're doing is submitting events for one specific leg, one specific freight order. You could do it one at a time. You can just wait at the end, do it all at once. Really, the system doesn't stop you from submitting all the events at one single time. And then you would just click on save, and eventually this would be recorded in the system. So I believe that is quite simple. I may have gone a bit too fast, but let's see. I'm going to look at the chat and see if there are any questions. Okay, so we do have one here. Thank you, Adrian. If a user creates an event and saves the order, can the order be changed after? Either delete the event or details of the event. Okay, and saves the order. Okay, so I guess what this means is if I'm creating an unexpected event, can that event then be changed afterwards? So let's see that. So we have the delay one here. Let's say we already submitted it and posted. We could always get rid of the note here, and then in the execution, if by any chance we say, you know what, this was a mistake and we want to delete it, we could always see if we can just cancel this one. I'm not sure because we haven't tried to make any changes in terms of deleting it. What we could do, I know that in CCP we couldn't. So once you submit something, it seems like the system keeps it there in the system. The only thing you could do is maybe add a note saying disregard, but in the sense of deleting it and making it disappear from this list, we are not 100% sure. Now, even if I clicked on cancel, selecting this line, it will not make any changes here. There's no right click button here for delete input history from user. In this case, I could try, but we did that in CCP. We've tried it in TM. In a sense, getting rid of something you have done doesn't seem possible. What you could do is just add a note saying disregard this event. And the same thing happens with CCP. If we already submitted an event, getting rid of it is impossible. You could change a date, just like you can do in the delay. You can change things here, but you can't eliminate this event from the list.
And you can always use, for example, or edit the reported event, or add an unexpected event just to indicate that a previous one was wrong, right? And to add the real ones. For example, if the loading begin was reported in the wrong date, we could always modify the note and add an additional loading begin as unexpected to report the real loading, right? For example, so we can make use of the unexpected events to really reflect the real dates if we did any mistake.
Yes, exactly. Actually, I'm looking at the loading begin here. If I select it and I simply just change the date, actual event date, in this case I thought there was a matchbox, we could probably, let's see if I just change the date here to 8. Oh, sorry, yes, edit would be a good idea. And then just click on the calendar and change it back to the 8th. And click on enter, or actually report. It should, there you go, see, it keeps it, and we can still change the date here anyway. So changes in terms of event reason, the event name in this case, we could, if I change this, can't change the name, see? In this case I can't change the loading begin. The only thing I can change is the event reason and the event date and even the time, as many times as you want, but the event will always stay here. Okay, so basically this is how you would submit events, expected and unexpected events in TM. Now, we also learned how to add the notes, and the only thing that would be missing, of course, would be to add the attachments. Now, it would be nice to have an option here in this same screen to add an attachment, but as far as I know, there is no option to add an attachment in this particular screen. We would have to move on to the tab for attachments. See notes, we have notes here too, and attachments, and this would be the tab where we would add any documentation related to any of the events. So basically, I'm not sure if this will still change in the future. So far we don't know, but it would be probably nice to have a combination of notes and attachments under the execution. So for each event that we select, we add something and attach something directly related to that event, instead of having to go here to this tab and adding the file here and explaining what event this relates to. So basically, if you want to add the attachments, you would do it in this tab here, and linked to the freight order, and you would have to specify what this attachment is linked to in terms of the event that you're talking about. Okay, so basically I believe that's all we wanted to cover today. The Excel, the actual scenarios for COE, how some of the nomenclatures change when we're uploading an Excel instead of a DTR, we're getting a forwarding order number, the scenarios, LOA, non-LOA, and how those are the same as the DAP or XWorks Incoterms, how we would plan transportation, and then eventually another thing that we didn't see yesterday was what we just did now, which is the submission of events, expected and unexpected events, adding notes and adding attachments. So basically that's all we wanted to cover for today. We'll also be sending you an exercise so you guys could practice this in the system before the end of the day, as well as the actual recording. So any questions before we close the session? All right, thank you guys for writing in the chat. Thank you, Concheta, Adrian, Maristela. Okay, well, glad there's no questions. Hopefully it's because it's all quite simple. I mean, I know when you spend time playing around with the system, the questions will pop up, so I'm thinking maybe Thursday will be a day for Q&A mainly. But thank you guys, and see you guys tomorrow for Troops.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you all, and see you all tomorrow.